Welcome to the Rev and the Rav, a program of interreligious dialogue and discovery. My name is Rabbi Daniel Lehmann, president of Hebrew College.
And I'm Nick Carter, president of Andover Newton Theological School. Welcome.
Nick, recently you were down in North Carolina,
Right.
at the state capitol,
Yes.
participating in a protest, I guess, the voting rights issues down in North Carolina. And not only did you go, but you took a whole group from Andover Newton. And I'm curious about the genesis of that participation and how you see it in terms of the religious mission of Andover Newton and your own, individual religious life.
What were you doing down there?
Yeah.
Well, the prompt was our invitation to Rev William Barber, who's the head of the NAACP in North Carolina, to come to Andover Newton campus and talk with students there about what was going on. That over the last couple of years, particularly in the last 18 months, the legislature in North Carolina has one by one taken away over 40 years of civil rights advancement, in not only voting rights, but in terms of health care, of discrimination, all sorts of things, and really brought back Jim Crow. And as we looked at it, and as particularly as a person of faith, and I watched this, I realized this was not a local issue, that this was a national issue. And in many ways, here we are 50 years later after Martin Luther King and civil rights, that some of the very things that they fought for were being taken away. And the fundamental question of that was at stake there was that it was not a localized issue, that it was a national issue. It was a moral and justice issue.
And it was clergy-led in terms of the nature of the demonstration.
And this was particularly fascinating that Reverend Barber, when we went down there, insisted that the clergy lead, and he admonished politicians that they should not be in the front of this march. And clergy wore robes and stoles and things. As I thought about it and reflected with folks at the school, with our faculty and with our students, we realized that this was a critical classroom for the preparation of a new generation of moral and spiritual leaders. The sense in which, where does my faith hit the road? And that we needed to be there. And we extended the invitation. We actually canceled a trustees meeting.
Wow.
And invited faculty, staff, trustees, students, and alums to join us. We had over 30 people come.
Amazing. And it was supposed to be the largest demonstration of this.
There was almost
type since
100,000 people came. Wow. It was the largest demonstration in the South since Selma. It was a fascinating moment. I preached at a local church, and we did a teach-in there. One of our faculty members did a teach-in.
And what's your sense about the larger frame of people's spiritual life and even sense of their spiritual leadership in relationship to service and civil rights and human rights?
Well, it's a fascinating question. But I think as I listen to students and we do research on young people, trying to discern a path of meaningful service in life, that there's a growing interest in a life of service. We're experiencing a generation, I'm sure you've seen some of it too, of young people who do want to make a difference. And with it is an interesting distrust or cynicism about established institutions.
Right, very much.
We've seen it more and more that folks want to get their hands dirty. They want to get involved.
Sort of an NGO generation in terms of where they see the real work being done.
Yeah. Now, have you seen that at Hebrew College?
Absolutely. I think in terms of our rabbinical students, there's a very strong desire to work within settings that are directly dealing with issues of need, of service. A lot of them have experience doing intense volunteer work over long periods of time before entering rabbinical school. There's also a global consciousness about it. It's not just
Yeah.
local. So when you say going down to North Carolina because it's a national issue, I think that that's very much at the heart of people's sense that there's a collapse of the local and the global, and you really have to be willing to engage people and their needs wherever they may be.
Yeah, I think there is much. We're seeing students that easily see the whole world as their classroom,
Right, exactly.
and they're ready to relate to the whole world. I find myself wanting to. I've been trying to put a handle on it for some time, of these folks who aren't interested in denominations.
Right.
In many ways, they're not even interested in traditional church. So I've started to call them passionaries. I've sort of molded from the 19th century missionaries.
Right.
There is this sense of I want to go, I want to get involved, I want to be there, and I have a little bit of a distrust of traditional institutions to help me.
Yeah.
How have you been wrestling with that here?
Well, we've seen in this recent Pew study of American Jews that there's a growing number of American Jews who do not identify or affiliate with any of the denominations within Judaism. There is that distrust, I think, of those kinds of institutional settings. They label themselves Jewish by religion and even spiritual, but not through synagogues, not through some of the established historical institutions that in the 20th century were critical to the development of American Judaism. So there's a real shift away from those mainstream settings into more direct service, much greater sense of the global, at the same time that there's a commitment to local communities and making a difference where one lives.
Now, you and I were talking earlier about a new program that you're looking to start very, very soon, right now.
It's a gap year program for high school graduates. It's going to be 50% North American 18-year-olds and 15% Israelis. It will really be the first program which balances Israelis and Americans in that age group. It used to be that Israelis, right after high school, go into the army. So there was never an opportunity for 18-year-olds from both sides of the ocean to be together. Now there's a growing number of Israeli high school graduates who defer the army service for a year, and they spend that year in leadership and study programs that are approved by the Army as pre-Army programs. So what we're doing is, together with the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, the Shalom Hartman Institute, we're developing this gap year program, which is going to have an intense learning component, text-focused, but the afternoons are going to be spent in service and in leadership internships with interesting NGOs and organizations that are trying to transform the city of Jerusalem and Israel more generally, to give people a real experience on the ground of the possibilities for change on the social level.
That's a fascinating program. I'm going to watch that closely because I think more and more we need to be doing these kinds of experiments.
Right, and we've talked with Andover Newton, and we're taking some steps together now to think about the year after college.
Right.
After the gap year after college, before people know exactly what they want to do something also that's interreligious on both of our campuses, but that has a strong service component. Thinking about this question of how does religious leadership actually move into that service space in ways that allow religion, to be an active force for social change.
And I think that's critical, because particularly here in the U.S., if you look at most of the major social movements in the history of the United States, they really had their birth in the religious communities, and they were sustained and had their character shaped by the religious community. And those of us who are longing for an ongoing change and evolution and this sort of wrestling for the soul of America realize that we need to be nurturing another set of religious leaders who are capable of doing that.
Right, and next week on Monday, our two schools are joining together for this day of service, which is going to focus on the notion of dreams and both celebrating the life of Martin Luther King Jr. and also Abraham Joshua Heschel and the work that they both did to try to bring about that social change. So we're going to have a whole day on this Hill of various workshops, concerts, and various performing arts that are going to give expression to this I Have a Dream.
It'll be fun.
notion,
It'll
yeah.
be fun. Well, folks, we want to thank you for joining us today as we explore what's happening with a new generation of religious leaders and the role of our institutions in trying to help support them and form them in their work. So for today, thank you for joining the Rev and the Rav. I'm Nick Carter, president of Andover Newton. Peace.
And I'm Daniel Lehmann from Hebrew College. Shalom.